Right, bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. It's been quite a Sunday. I didn't get that much sleep last night. I hope I won't be rambling too much. It's 10 p.m. here and I'm tired, but I really, really do want to continue. Keep going with these live streams. I had a good streak last week with Parashat Naso, with Nazarite Awareness Week, and I do want to continue, keep on streaming. It does a lot of good for me, right? I enjoy the engagement. I enjoy learning from you people, getting your questions, getting your opinions, and it's very much a blessing. So I'm going to continue basically the chat and the comments, DMs that I got from last week. And hello, Peace and Coffee, who is already here. Hello, I have a question or two from you that I will be referencing, that I will be addressing here. All right, let's just dive right in. So Khalid bin Walid asked, "What's the hardest thing about Shabbos?" A good question. Rav Yosef famously said in the Mishnah, in the oral traditions, he said, many laws are there to the Shabbos. A lot of halachas pertain to the Shabbos, which is true. So what's the hardest thing about Shabbos? First of all, Edit Learn for me answered, and he said, doing nothing, pooping in the dark, the stale beer. To which I responded, it can be tough sometimes, more depending on those around me, the wife and kids, because sometimes if there's negative vibes, if there's tension, if there's, well, it can affect each and every one of us on day-to-day weekdays, let alone Shabbat, which is supposed to be a day that is set apart, that is sacred, that is holy, that has its own laws and regulations. I'm just gonna pop over here. Okay, let's see that okay, we're good. So I don't know, there's a lag here from the phone to the actual live stream. I don't know when I'm in or out, that is, but let's just go with it. So I answered Edit Learn for me as well, and I said I enjoy the freedom, right? There's freedom in abstaining from the day-to-day hustle and bustle of the weekday. There's a great blessing, a great freedom in what he called doing nothing. But as it turns out, on Shabbos, when you do nothing, there's actually a lot that you are doing, right? There are certain prayers, there are certain meals, there are many hymns and different melodies that are very unique and special. And as I said, Shabbos, a day of rest, it's a covenant in and of itself. And as such, the day itself is imbued with a lot of greatness and a lot of wonderment. And if one is able to harness the day and make the most of it, there's a lot that it can teach you, right, while you do nothing. So I said I enjoy the freedom. I keep a light on in the bathroom for the entirety of the Shabbos for 25 hours, and I don't drink, so no stale beer for me. But even so, I would think that I would keep the beer in the refrigerator so it wouldn't be stale. BMXers with dreadlocks had a few questions, and I'll try to address some of them. So he said, first of all, what do you think or feel about a Nazarite working at a winery or a wine cellar? I know it's not prohibited or anything, he says, but how do you feel about it? Is it like a desecration of some sort? Do you view it like similar to a Muslim or Jew working at a butchery where they sell pork or not? And I said, indeed, halacha, right, rabbinic law does not prohibit the Nazarite from working in a vineyard if it is his work, his job. But if it's not work, then there's a famous saying, round and round go, Nazarite, and come not near the vineyard. In other words, the Nazarite is, according to rabbinic law, is supposed to abstain from the vineyard or vineyard, however you choose to say it. And according to the Rambam, if I'm not mistaken, Maimonides and the laws of the Nazariteship, he says that, let's say I shouldn't be in a bar, right, places where they serve wine, although I have been in bars, even though I don't drink, I haven't been to a bar in some time, but I don't abstain from going to bars just because they serve alcohol or wine there, even though I don't drink, right? But if it's for honest paid labor, then there's no prohibition, just like BMXers said. So I view it as an irony, if you will, the Nazarite working in a vineyard, but it's nothing that I'm against. Peace and Coffee asked, do you get picky with kosher for fruit and vegetables? I think you would enjoy a farmer's market. I have been to farmers markets. They have them in the Shuk, the famous Jerusalem Ben Yehuda Shuk, the market here. And he continues and says, I was told by a rabbi that there should be restrictions on how certain things are grown, certain fruits and vegetables. Certain bugs can't be around the food, and you can't use certain manures in order for it to be kosher. So while it's true that you shouldn't have bugs and other pests in your food, especially ones that are not kosher, there is, with the advent of technology and the idea of microscopic things living in your food, there have been advances likewise in halacha and in what is considered kosher fruits and vegetables or not. As for the manures, I have no idea, since I'm not a man of the land, right? I'm not a laborer of the land. I've never grown my own fruits and vegetables. I have 2 trees out here in the yard, in the small yard that I have here out front, but I didn't grow them, and I don't know. You tell me, guys, are there certain manures that you shouldn't be using? Does anyone know? Please enlighten me. I'd love to know. So if I do buy kosher fruits and vegetables, when I do buy kosher fruits and vegetables, that is usually always, since I'm here in Israel, then it has to do more with the Sabbath of the land, the Shemitah, the 7th year, where it needs to be, there are restrictions on what you can and cannot buy, depending on who owns the actual land, who are the ones who are the owners of the land on which the fruit and vegetables are grown, and there are many restrictions there. But generally speaking, I go through certain vegetables. Let's say lettuce is very prone to having worms and things in it. And when I say very prone, I mean it's just par for the course. So there are many ways of getting rid of it. Either you grow it, one grows it from the get-go with a certain height, elevated. There's what's called gush katif, the gush katif method, and different farmers and landowners use that method. But there are ways where you can make sure that there are no living bugs in your food, right? Certain ways of washing the fruit with certain soaps or suds or I don't know what, and you can sort of dunk them, not marinate exactly, but dunk them in this liquid, right, of water and soap and whatever, which is much like dish soap, right, which will kill any living thing there, but keep the fruits and vegetables clean. So, and he mentions also that I'm vegan. So yes, generally, if it's vegan, it's kosher. I say generally because there are specifics, restrictions, details, nuances, and the minutiae of halacha. And though I'm not a man of halacha in the sense that I don't keep strict halacha, I do try and go through, let's say, lettuce or other vegetables where they are more prone to having bugs in them, and I look through them, I wash them, I rinse them. So I go, I try to make it kosher, but I don't go all out. Okay, let's see. Another question by BMXers. He says, I believe it's a commandment for a Nazarite to allow it to lock up, right? Meaning the hair, if they have hair. So the words in Parashat Naso, the word is pera, meaning usually translated as long or wild. So he asked, and what eventually happens when it grows wild? So I said, depending on the person's genetics, depending on their environment, depending on the state of their hair, more often than not, if you just leave the hair be, it will lock up of its own accord. And he continues and says, like Not a Nation says, all hair types will eventually lock up. In modern times, he says, it takes up to 2, sometimes 3 years for certain hair types to fully lock up. It took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years for my hair to lock up. I had my first knot here in the back after, I guess, 6 months, if I recall correctly. And yeah, after a few years, it was all locked up. And he says, certain hair types will fully lock up. In ancient times, he says, I believe this was not the case because all people had very frizzy to extremely curly hair naturally. And I suppose that's true, and there were less products, and there were less tools, and less things to do to mess with your hair, and so it was more the case that hair would lock up of its own accord, especially those who were living here in a Middle Eastern climate. I guess it would lock up naturally. He continues and asks on a different, in the same vein, in a different question, what does apple cider vinegar do for your hair? Because in the hair video I mentioned that I used to use apple cider vinegar to condition the hair after rinsing it with baking soda, right? So first you alkaline it, and then you base it, I suppose, right? That would be the term. So it kind of evens out. And I said that the apple cider vinegar conditions the hair, it gives it a nicer look and feel. And he said that a nicer look is not a natural look, to which I respond, yes, I meant that it just makes it shinier and smoother, and it cleans the hair strands from the outside. So that's kind of what I meant by it. But if you use apple cider vinegar, it makes it more manageable if you're into managing your hair with different tools and things. It works much like a conditioner. Of course, you need to not just pour it on, you need to dilute it with certain things. I added essential oils many times, rosemary, peppermint, tea tree, in different, a few drops of this, a few drops of that. So it helps the hair be nicer. So speaking of prophets, he asked, well, you know what, let's just hop over to the chat, see if there's anything there. Oh, okay, so hi, Robert Harrison. Hi, how you doing? And Hossein, hi. Eid Saeed, Hossein MV. Don't panic, hello from Iran. No panic. Happy Eid to you. It's Eid al-Adha, the holiday of the sacrifice. If I'm not mistaken, it's a 3-day holiday, or is it one major day and a couple of other days? Hossein, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is Eid al-Adha tonight, again, if I'm not mistaken. So happy holidays to the Muslims out there. I'm well aware that even though I have my, I guess, innate biases or concerns about Islam, living in the Middle East, living in Israel, being surrounded by Muslims who are, well, some of them are not interested in having me here in Israel, but I'll leave that aside for now. I do not panic. I'm well aware that in Iran, right, the ancient land of Persia, a lot of the people are pro-Israel, or at least a significant amount of the population, and it's the regime, it's the Islamic Republic of Iran's regime that is vehemently anti-Israel, that calls for its destruction on a regular basis, be it the supreme leader or the president. Did you have elections yet, Hussein? I think you are about to have elections, or maybe you did have elections since the death of the old Rais, of the old president in the helicopter crash a week and a half ago. So no panic. Robert says, I think there's something in the ewe lamb, the young ram and lamb first year going on the Nazir hands. Well, sure, there's definitely, with every sacrifice, not just the offerings which the Nazarite brings if he had to have his vow renewed, if he was defiled by a dead body, or in the fulfillment of the vow, there's definitely a lot there. I don't offhand know all of the, let's say, mystical or esoteric meanings of the different animals. I know a little bit about it, but certainly not in connection to the Nazarite. The hair of the Nazarite, as Robert also mentions in a previous comment, according to the Book of Numbers, the Nazarite's hair goes in the fire under the peace offering. There was a special chamber in the temple called the Nazarite's chamber, where the Nazarite man or woman would shave their head at the fulfillment of the vow and put their hair under the peace offering in the fire, and then they would drink wine, and they are still called Nazarites at that time, interestingly enough. I want Israeli pomegranates and date fruit, Robert says. Well, I have pomegranates growing right outside. I have lemons and pomegranates growing. The pomegranates are coming in now. The lemons have been around for a couple of months already. I have tons of lemons. And speaking of kosher fruits and vegetables, I tithe. I take what I consider to be a tenth. I approximate what a tenth is from the tree, and I set it aside. There are different rules and laws pertaining to fruits and vegetables and things grown in the land of Israel which do not pertain to the lands outside of Israel. So I try and do that to the best of my ability. I don't know if I do it properly halachically, though I have in the past. I don't know if I do it now halachically proper. Some of it's supposed to go to the priest, and different years, some of it goes to the Levite, some of it goes from the Levite to the priest, and some of it goes to the poor, depending on the year, on the calendar Hebrew year. Oscar Reinhold, hi there. Yo, I got a question. Ask away. In the meantime, while you write your question, I will go back to the other questions I got so far. So BMXers said, you have to train to be a prophet, a messenger? I sincerely want to know because I've never heard of this before, or maybe I'm just being forgetful, he says, haven't read the Bible, any scriptures in a long time now. Well, it's always good to read the Bible, refresh your memory on the different things, whether it's the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, the writings. There is so much in the Bible that was kept around for a reason, and a few books almost did not make it into the Hebrew Bible, but they are there for a reason. There's still a lot that we can learn from all of the books of the Bible. There are 24 books traditionally in the Hebrew Bible. Each have their own unique revelation and emanation, which we are called to implement, to learn from, whether it's historical or spiritual or everything, mixed up together, right? Ways of being in the world. So I answered, prophets had masters, and they were apprentices. Very famously, Elijah and Elisha. One was the apprentice of the other, right? Elisha was Elijah's apprentice, and then Gehazi was Elisha's apprentice. So there are masters and apprentices. There were schools of prophets. I think it's more like schools of fish, right? Groups of prophets. Very famously, after Samuel the prophet anoints Saul, or no, yes, he does anoint him at that time, and he says one of the signs will be that first you will get a messenger who will come to you and say that the asses have been found, right? The female donkeys that your father Kish lost have been found, and you will meet a group of prophets, and then the Spirit will come upon you, and you will become a prophet, which indeed came to pass, as it's written in the book of Samuel. So he says, are you speaking, BMXers says, are you speaking of like Elijah and Elisha? Sure, but did they train them to become prophets, or did the Most High send them, raise up prophets, as it says in the book of Amos? Now, Yonah, very famously, Jonah, the prophet, it says, not in the book itself, but I think in the external teachings, in the Midrash, it says that he was at the temple during the celebration of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, the festival of the gathering of the grain, and that he was so happy and was caught up in the spirit of happiness and of Sukkot, right, and of the festival, that prophecy came upon him at that moment, and he got the famous message of go to Nineveh and speak to them what I'm sending you to do. And the rest of it you can read in the book of Jonah, right? He runs away, he takes a ship, it's a ship. So in some cases, I suppose there was no training, right? Saul meeting the prophets, Yonah receiving prophecy, like boom, all at once, suddenly becoming a different person, just like Samuel told Saul would happen. But I also think that most prophets did indeed train and learn how to master themselves, and again, certain meditations, certain techniques, certain ways and modes of being in the world, which opened up those channels of prophecy to them, to them like personally. And he says, yes, there were prophets, and then there were prophets. Saul was not sent by the Most High, but caught the spirit of the time, if you will. Some messages were conveyed through them, through these prophets. It wasn't really important as the ones he sent through his prophets that he chose for a specific task. Right, so we know that certain prophets, right, we have books named after them, books like Yeshayahu, books like Yirmiyahu, right, Isaiah and Jeremiah, who were tasked with talking to the nations, with conveying messages to the people of Israel, to the kingdom of Judah, to the kingdom of Israel. And more often than not, because those were not the only prophets who were around at the time, many other prophets existed. And I think that, well, many times the prophets were around for the people, right? Whether it's the royalty who consulted them, or whether it's just the people. For instance, Saul, right? The guy who he was traveling with said, oh, you know what? There's a dude here. Let's go ask him where the asses are, right? That we lost. They lost their asses, as it were. So yes, some were chosen for a specific task. Some had books, right? That we still have to this day, that they were named after, that were their namesake, right? And again, things to learn from them here and now in this day and age. Even though they speak of the deliverance and destruction of old, there's still a lot to be gleaned and learned from them. So I suppose that spirit of prophecy, right? In the book of Yoel, if I'm not mistaken, it says that afterwards, says God, I will pour my spirit upon all flesh, right? Your young men will have dreams, and your elders will, what is it? Well, basically everybody will be a prophet, right? We are all meant to be prophets eventually, whether it's the children of Israel or humankind at large. We have it in us. We are all made in the image of God. We have that spark of divinity. And I think that prophecy is a natural progression, right? It's not even an end point. It's just a means to an end, right? Of receiving God. The word for prophet in Hebrew is navi. Navi comes from the word niv, meaning speech. And that is why they are called prophets or messengers. They are there to deliver the word of God. All right, let's go. I see that a few things came in here. Let's see. Okay, English or Spanish? Well, English, if you will, because no habla español, unfortunately. So go for it. Hey, it's me, says BMXers. Hello, it's you. It is you. Good to see you here. Yes, hello, dear friend. It probably depends on the gravitude of divination. So I'm assuming you were talking about something I was just rambling about here. You'll have to be a bit more specific. I believe it also may have to do with lineage. Yes, I suppose there are some who are more predisposed to prophecy, some who are more predisposed to receiving divine revelation, but we are all made in the image of God. We all have the capacity to receive the word and to let it out. And in fact, a prophet who receives the word of God is prohibited from not prophesying. You must, as we see with Jonah, you must do, right? You must get it out. And Daniel, very famously, I think, he describes how he received prophecy, if it's him that I'm thinking of, right? And it was like going into a trance where you just had to let it out. Where were we? Okay, Peace and Coffee. Do you prescribe to the 13 principles of Maimonides? So the 13 principles of faith that Maimonides brings down, he brings them down, but he didn't make them up. Yes, I do prescribe to them. They are not commandments, as it were, but they do speak of certain very important principles, things like believing in the rising of the dead. And when I say rising of the dead, I mean partaking eventually of the tree of life, right? Rising from the dead, not necessarily like zombies at the cemetery in Michael Jackson's Thriller, but more like rising above death and making amends and fulfilling our task that we were cast out of Eden before we were able to fulfill. So I do prescribe to the 13 principles of faith brought down by Maimonides, and a very famous one was that there was no prophet like Moses. The prophecy of Moses is very different from the other prophets. He is the father of prophets, even though he wasn't the first one. Another very famous one is that God has no image. There is no, right? We are the image of God, but God has no image, and there is no picture or anything that we can attribute to the Most High. We can only speak of the divine revelation, right? We don't really know what God is about. God famously tells Moses that no man can see me and live. And the highest revelation that Moses got was, let's say, from the back. Let's see. Taylor 26, hi, good to see you. Nice to have you here again. How do you interpret the cedarwood, hyssop, and crimson thread in Leviticus 14:4? All right, so by your leave, good people, I will open Leviticus 14:4 in the JPS Bible. Leviticus 14:4. Hang on a sec, I have an old computer here. Okay, so I'm reading a verse. Then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 living clean birds and cedarwood and scarlet and hyssop. Okay, so we're talking about leprosy. Now, leprosy is not the disease that we know now, the disease of leprosy. What's called, what is it? Not Hansen's disease. Yes, Hansen? Anyway, the disease of leprosy is not biblical leprosy. We're talking about a different type of leprosy that kind of is not in the world right now, as far as I know. But it is one that has to do with a spiritual inadequacy that is manifested physically in the human body. So how do I interpret it? I interpret it exactly as such. The idea is, or one idea, is that you take birds, which are from the sky, and you take hyssop, which is one of the lowest plants, and it's this idea that the leper may be in a kind of ritual uncleanliness now, and one of the worst ones. We read in last week's Torah portion that the leper, among others, is sent from all 3 camps, the camp of the tabernacle, the camp of the Levites and priests, and the camp of the other 12 tribes surrounding it. And the leper is very famously, I say famously a lot, is just shunned from all of them, cast out until he is pure once again. So it's this idea that you may be low like hyssop now, but you can rise up and be like the bird. Also, one bird is set free after being dunked in the blood of the slain bird, of the slaughtered bird. And one bird is indeed slaughtered. So it's this idea of life and death. And the leper, it has a lot to do, the disease of biblical leprosy in the human body has a lot to do with the tongue and with what's called lashon hara, evil speech, evil tongue. So it goes back to this idea, which is mentioned also in Proverbs, that life and death is on the cusp of your tongue, right? And you should prohibit yourself from speaking with an evil speech and an evil tongue. That means gossip. That means, well, different things, but mainly not to go and be a gossip, not to go and spread lies, to be a man and woman of truth. And that can help you to not become a leper. That can help you be more like the bird and less like the hyssop. But we are made of both, right? We have a soul, we have a body. One is dust from the earth, and one is a kind of divine spark, if you will. Once again, it's not the actual divine, I maintain, because there's always a difference between creator and creation. Okay, let's see. I'll go for another question from before, and then I'll get right back into the chat. BMXers asked, so the Tree of Life teachings is technically not Kabbalah then? And I said, everything kosher to do with the Tree of Life is Kabbalah. And he says, okay, but didn't you say that the origin did not come from Kabbalah, but essentially from Eden? So I told him, right, any study of the 10 Sfirot of the Tree of Life is in fact Kabbalah. Kabbalah means to receive. And we now are the Hebrew people. At some point, it did become a Hebrew teaching, the Kabbalah, but originally, before we split up into the Hebrews and 70 root nations, it was something which was meant, I believe, to belong to all of mankind, and will indeed later, I think, belong to all of mankind. I know that there are there's a great controversy surrounding Kabbalah in the Hebrew people and outside of it, who can learn what and when and how. That's why I am cautious and I say kosher Kabbalah, because there are different strains and different sects of Kabbalists, like Hermetic Kabbalah, which I think is right Middle Age Kabbalah, which is not as kosher as I think it's not as kosher as, let's say, the Kabbalah of the Ari, the Kabbalah of the Ramban, Nachmanides, or the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, right, who bring ancient Hebrew teachings into the fold and don't go for the Hermetic and don't go for the other types of Kabbalah that were handed down at the time. And it could very well be that other types of Kabbalah and of study of the Tree of Life and the 10 Sfirot belong to other nations, but the Hebrew people have their own unique, I believe, way of learning Kabbalah. And you could argue that it all goes back to the same root, but once again, we are not in Eden. There is Hebrews and nations, right? There's a duality now in this world. Many dualities. So there is this idea of the Sfirot speak of divine revelation and of connectivity and of modifying, well, I'm not going to say modifying, amending your speech and your conduct in the world in order to be a channel, in order to channel divine energy through here in this life, in this world. That's what Torah and mitzvot, right? The Torah and commandments are all about. We very famously have 613 commandments, though one person cannot do all 613, and the others, right, the Noahides, as they are known, have their own 7 laws of the Noahides. Chabad are very much pushing this idea of the Noahide laws to the other nations. But human beings are made in the image of God, and we all have the capacity, right? Much like we have the capacity to receive prophecy, we have that capacity of learning and studying the Tree of Life and the 10 Sfirot and the way that God reveals himself in the world. Okay, let's see. Let's go back to the chat. Okay, wow, a lot going on here. Okay. Taylor 26 says, I finally got an interpretation of those after several years of not knowing what they meant. So do you mean not knowing what they meant in practice, like practically? What were these, what was the hyssop, what was the tree, what type of bird? Or do you mean sort of spiritually what they meant? And maybe you say it later, but we'll get there. So if you finally have an interpretation after years, do share. What is the interpretation as it was handed down to you? Robert Harrison says, a lot of people don't realize the Apostle Paul the Benjamite was a Nazir. There is this idea that certain Christians or followers of Yeshua push that they were Nazarites. People say John the Baptist was a Nazarite. People say that certain apostles, maybe all of them were Nazarites. I have no idea. I think it does make sense that if these people were kosher Jews and they were following their master, Yeshua, at the time, that maybe they did take upon themselves a vow of the Nazarite, whether it's for a set period of time or whether it was for life, I don't know. It's not even apparent to me that these people existed. But if they did, it makes sense. It makes sense that they did take upon themselves laws of Nazariteship. I know that they had their quarrels, let's say, with the scribes, the Pharisees, Chazal, our sages, and there were different sects at the time, right? The Essenes and the Samaritans and the Kutim and the Tzdokim and different, the Baitosim as well, or is that another name for the Tzdokim? I don't remember. But there were different sects around at the time of the Second Temple, and other sects were always around. It so happened that because of the way that history carried out, it's the rabbinic Orthodox Judaism that has survived more than all of the other sects, but they are certainly still around. The Karaites, right, who go strictly with the written Torah, but not with the oral law, and they have their own interpretation of oral law that was handed down to them. BMX says, sunshine, sunshine, reggae, let the good vibes get a little stronger. So who are you quoting there? Because I'm not sure. I started riding BMX again, and I'm very happy. Good. It's good. It's good for exercise. It's good for the soul. I mean, years ago, I rode a bike in Yerushalayim for 7 years before I moved to the Netherlands, where I mention every time I mention it, ironically, I did not have a bike in the Netherlands. Blasphemous, I know. Robert says, I was thinking about you, little Andre, the other day. You still have your flat? No, I do not. By the way, I miss you and Paula as well. See, it's nice that this channel is able to make these connections. I've said it many times in the past. It's so much fun to have this little community here. And even though it's been such a long time since I broadcasted regularly, once again, I push go live and people are here and making connections and saying hello and catching up. And it's lovely to see, it's lovely to behold how I start this tiny little thing, but it sort of grows organically. Peace and Coffee question, were there any prophets among Bnei Noach in Tanakh? Yes, there were prophets, much like there were prophets who were designated for the Hebrew people, there were prophets designated for the nations. Bilam is the more famous one in the 5 books of Moses, but there were others, and I'm sure that much like in the Hebrew people, there were ones that were kosher and ones that were not kosher, ones that delivered true word and ones that kind of went astray and delivered words that were supposed to confuse the people. Jeremiah and Tzidkiah ben Knaana, I know, had their difference of opinion on what will happen with the regiments of Aram that were attacking the children of Israel at the time. So yes, there were prophets among the Noahides, right, among the nations at the time, and I don't know their names, but I think for sure that they existed because, like I said, we are made in the image of God and we have that capacity for prophecy. And the Rabbi Nazarite Rabbi David Kohen, who died in the late 70s, said that the Nazariteship is a stepping stone to prophecy, and I definitely believe that to be the case. Yes asks, have you studied Neoplatonism? No, I'm not a very educated man, certainly not in philosophy. And so I haven't studied Plato to the degree that I would have liked. And so Neoplatonism, no, but do share what is Neoplatonism, and have you studied it? Give us a few gems, a few tidbits, if you will, on Neoplatonism, because I'd love to learn more. BMXers answers Robert, I don't know what regard as wild, but I do tricks and fall and get injured a little at times, right? So he's a BMXer. The BMX bike, what, BMX, is it an acronym? I forget, I think it is an acronym of some kind, but I don't remember what it is. So yeah, BMXers do great tricks. It's nice to see that you're still are doing your tricks and that you fall. Why do we fall, Bruce? We ask in the Dark Knight to get up again. That's why. I say that to my kids, and it's true. Peace and Coffee asks, aren't the 13 principles of Maimonides? Wait, hang on. I see that I'm stuck. Am I stuck? No, I'm not stuck. Okay. I froze for a second, so I wasn't sure. Okay, let's see. Peace and Coffee asks, aren't the 13 principles of Maimonides a minimum requirement for all Jewish people? I would say no. I don't think they are a minimal requirement. I think that there's a lot of truth in them, and maybe Maimonides himself would disagree with me, but I think that well, look, I mean, all Jewish people, it depends on who do you consider to be a Jew. I suppose I suppose that's what it comes down to. But yes, we are commanded to believe certain things, and they are laid out mostly in the written Torah. And the 13 principles of faith, they are either derived all from Torah or partly from Torah and partly from the external teachings. And I do believe that they give a very good kind of succinct idea of what it is that one ought to believe. Is it the minimum? I'm sure some people would say it is. Maybe most of them are. I don't remember all 13 offhand. I could go through them right now because there's a poem that was comprised, Yigdal Elohim Chai, and it sort of goes through all 13 quickly. I won't bore you with it now, nor will I go through it in my head just now. I don't want to waste your time. I'm inclined to believe that all, that most, if not all, are pretty much minimal requirements, if you will, of faith. But there are many people who would say, no, there's faith, and then there's the physical conduct of carrying out the mitzvahs, the commandments. And as long as you carry out the commandments, there is no actual commandment to believe in certain things. There's no commandment to believe. There's only a commandment to, let's say, submit to the will of the Most High and carry out the mitzvahs as they were brought down through Moses at Mount Sinai, and later on rabbinic law or other teachings that became commandments. Because some commandments are from the oral traditions and some commandments are from the written Torah. They differ. Not most of them are from the written Torah. Like the major part of them, there are only like a handful. I don't remember the precise number, but a handful of laws that are rabbinic law that became part of 613 commandments. New Phone says, I'm sorry, man, I'm moving. Don't apologize. I'm well aware that I am here sometimes for a long time, and sometimes it can get boring, and sometimes I can ramble, and sometimes people don't have the time. So obviously, you got to move, keep on moving. Lord, I got to keep on moving. So yeah, move on. Hope to see you again sometime, New Phone. New Phone, who dis? Taylor 26 elaborates and says, hyssop is mentioned several times in the 5 books of Moses, and it seems to have the same function in all 3 cases. Exodus 12:22, Leviticus 14:4, and Numbers 19:6. Hyssop is a way of warding off death. Yes, right, it's dunked in the water and the ashes of the red heifer and sprinkled on those who need to become pure. Yes, it's one of those things, because it's one of the lower or one of the lowest growing things. It's there to kind of humble you, I suppose, and teach you that even though you are maybe very lowly right now, ritually unclean, in a bad place, you can rise up. You can rise up because humility is the key to all good traits. Humility is the key to all good characteristics and to all good things. Humility is associated with the crown, with keter, from the root from where everything basically emanates. Taylor continues, Exodus 12 gives the context of the cedar wood and crimson thread. They are referring to the doorway and firstborn. Yes, right, at the Exodus from Egypt. So that's the context there. Again, I don't want to bore people with ums and ahs and thinking about it, so I may have to get back to you later in the comments, but I hope to not forget, or to get back to you tomorrow night when we go live. So I hope you will forgive me. I'm going to continue with the chat right now. Yes, thank you, says yes. Oh, yes, says thank you. You will find Plotinus interesting. So it's not Plato, it's Plotinus. Okay. As do we know to whom deity Balaam believe? Well, okay. Balaam, in the 3 prophecies that he receives, he was being one of the nations and not one of the Hebrew people. The way that he would connect to God was first through the lower gods, right? Was first through the lower revelations, which other nations took to be deities in and of themselves. We call them the revelations of Adonai, but to the other nations, they were, right, the god of thunder, the god of fire, the god of this, the god of that. Way before Rome and Greece came into the picture, right? There were the Akkadians and the Assyrians and the Canaanites and so many others, and other teachings and traditions which associate different gods to the forces of nature, right? The spiritual commanding the physical. So it was something like that with Bilam. The 3rd prophecy that he delivers, when he looks upon the tents of the children of Israel from on high, that they say was true prophecy from the divine, like in a straight line, so to speak, and not going through the different, not going up or down, as it were, through the different gods and different lower revelations. But as for to whom do we know to whom deity Balaam believed? Well, I guess I kind of answered you a little bit here, but we see from the contact that he has with the messenger of God, he tells him, if what I'm doing is not okay, I'll turn back right now. And the angel tells him, no, continue, but you will only speak what I tell you to speak. It's like he tells them, beware, don't fall for the lower things. That I'm here and you can only do what I am telling you to do. That is also what he tells the messengers of Midian and Moab who come to call him once and then twice, right, the 2nd time. Yes, BMX is an acronym for bicycle motocross. I figured it was an acronym. I remembered something like that, so thanks for that. Sir Otto Egg says, what the help? Yes, what the help indeed. I could use some help. My God. Whew, I could use some help. All right, we can all use some help, huh? But I'm talking about me right now. So yes, what the help, Sir Otto Egg. Were you actually knighted? I'd love to know. BMXers continues and says, Robert, by the way, this is a channel I started, right? The BMXers with dreadlocks. There are content on it already, although not my own, right? So BMXers has different playlists of, or a playlist or a couple of playlists of BMXers who grow dreadlocks. It's niche, right? But that's part of what you're supposed to do here, I think, on YouTube, to niche down, as it were. And you'd be able to find a crowd that fits your niche if you just continue, and if you go with what you go, then it will grow. BMXers, have you heard from Seth Hall? Well, he asked him, but I will say I haven't heard from Seth Hall. I know that he's active on Facebook. In recent months, he has these posts, very long posts. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but he is active still. I don't know if he's still wandering the land or if he's settled down somewhere, but he is still active online from what I know. Hebrew Nazarite, how's Pinky? Pinky's okay. She is now 14 years old. I think she's a little deaf. I think she's getting a little blind, but she's relatively healthy and she's good to go. And I walk her, and occasionally she's, stinky, pinky, winky, who barks to wake me up before 6 a.m. But altogether, she's doing very well, and I'm enjoying the time spent with her. She's a lovely part of this family, right? The doggo that we live with. Taylor26 asks, do you support the Temple Institute? Do a lot of Jews Israelis support them? Well, what do you mean by support? I don't support them physically, I suppose, with donations, but there is a Rabbi Nazarite by the name of Joshua Friedman, and I mentioned him in the last week. He wrote the book Nazir Elohim, which came out 2 years ago, on the laws of the Nazariteship here and now in this day and age. I met with him, I spoke with him for over an hour. In the past, I had a few posters from the Temple Institute up on my wall of the Levitical choir and of a few other things to remind myself of my roots. The Temple Institute itself is lovely. They are making so many things in preparation for the third temple. Do a lot of Jews / Israelis support them? A lot? I wouldn't say a lot, but there are people, groups of people like the Temple Institute, who are definitely readying themselves physically, creating the different artifacts and clothing and the different and bringing about this temple before there is a temple, meaning they are setting the scene, right, and creating all of the backdrop, so when it is time for the third temple to be revealed and built, however the case may be, or if it's time to just skip over it, if that's the case, they will be ready. And well, I guess I'll leave it at that. So I do support them in the sense of, I think it's important to study these halachas, to study these rabbinic laws pertaining to the sacrifices and the different sacraments and the actual building of a temple, because most of the 613 commandments, more than half, pertain to the temple worship. So right now we are kind of running on a very limited amount of commandments that we can do day to day. There's still a world entire in every single commandment, but most of the commandments have to do with the ritual worship, which we now cannot carry out. So I guess I support the idea. I definitely support the idea, but I think that it needs to come naturally and organically. I think if there will be a third temple, it will be one that we build, right? When there will be peace. I hope that we won't. I hope that there will be peace and we will be able to rebuild the temple. And I mean, the Al-Aqsa and Omar mosques aside, so to speak, I believe that it's something that can be done, should be done. But as I've said many times in the past, I do believe that we can come to a place physically and spiritually where we bypass it, and not in a shortcut kind of a way, but in a way where the temple, right, was bricks and precious metals and fabrics and wine and water and oil, all of these physical things. But we, the human being, are the original temple. We, the human beings, are the original image of God, the temple of God. And it may very well be that even though the temple was needed in the past to bring down certain divine revelations into the world, we will be able to bypass it through our own innate divinity. And if we just let that in, if I do my part, if I do my part and truly strive and act in a way which manifests divinity in the world in the way that's unique to me, I believe that if we all get our act together and do that, we will be able to go bypass, if you will, the third temple and come to the place where the temple is a means to an end. And we will be able to achieve that end, right? To get back to Eden together as a unified human race in peace and partake of the fruit of the tree of life like we were supposed to. Craig Lace, wow, man, I haven't seen you here in a while. Thanks for being here. It's so much fun. So much fun to see familiar faces and profile pictures here. So good to see you. How's it from RSA? Been so long since seeing you. Yes, it has. Oh, it's nice to be here. It's nice. So things are good. Thank God. Things are good. Okay, let's see. HN, I'm surprised you know that. Yeah, I do. I visited the channel. I didn't watch any of the videos, but I did visit the channel and I saw what you had going on there because I told you when you told me that you want to start this, I said, yes, go for it. I'm sure that you will be able to get a group around you who will be able to discuss BMX and dreadlocks with you and those who combine the two. Peace and Coffee says, I had asked about Melchizedek. You must have missed my question. Well, sometimes the questions are deleted by YouTube. Sometimes they are held for review, and I don't see them because they don't appear, and I need to actually go into the YouTube Creator Studio and seek them out. So if you ever have comments, anyone out there that I don't answer, know that it's probably because of that. I try to answer every single question, or if not answer, to at least give a like and a heart, because I care about every single comment that I receive, whether it's here in the chat or whether it's in comments or DMs. I really do care about engaging with you people. It's part of why I'm doing this, part of why I started this channel, and the old channel, right, 6 years ago. So Melchizedek, the king of Shalem, right, who Avram and him met after the battle of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, right, of Sodom and all the others, right, in the book of Genesis. And it says that he gave him a tithe. It's the first time that the tithe is mentioned. And Avram refuses to take anything from the king. Right, he brings out, what is it? Lechem v'yain, right? He gets bread and wine. And he says, Baruch Avram le'el elyon. Blessed is Avram to El Elyon, koneh shamayim va'aretz, right? The one who is the master of the sky and the earth, of the heavens and the earth. So I must have missed the question. So ask it again. Maybe I will be able to address it here. Maybe not. Robert Harrison says, Hebrew Nazarite, I was telling some people traditionally Samuel the Kohat prophet was your forefather. Again, traditionally, it's not something that's actually founded. Traditionally, yes, my family are said to come from the line of Kehat, the Kehat clan of the tribe of Levi, to come from Samuel, who was also of the Levite family that I'm a part of. They say that we are originated there, and that Samuel is one of our forefathers. Yes. Again, it's not for sure, but it's something to keep in mind. Didn't realize Hebrew Nazarite was still online. Yes, I am still online. I just recently started to go online again on a daily, and I hope it will continue. I love it so much. I do. I love it. I love doing this now, even though it's almost 11 p.m. and I'm rambling, and my mind is a bit of a whoosh. But I love it. I do love it. In fact, I might say goodbye soon and continue this tomorrow, but for now, let's just keep on trucking. Okay. Taylor26 asks, do you believe in demons and unclean spirits? Yes, I do. I do. Because I believe that the physical world, right, the objective world, the world of objects, is only a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. It's the final destination, so to speak, over here in the physical world, but there are revelations of God on many different levels, and some of them are more like metaphysical, spiritual in nature, which do not have a physical form. Sometimes it's a spirit that can take a physical form. I definitely do believe in demons and unclean spirits. I believe that we affect that world with our conduct, with our do's and don'ts, and what we do definitely does affect, right? The revelation comes from up, down, and our revelations here in the world through us go from right down, up. And from up to down, from top to bottom, is considered the right hand, chesed, right, is considered the giving hand, right? The chamsa, as we know it, the hand that's always giving, the hand that's always open, the hand that embraces. And the things that we do here are from bottom to top, which are the left hand, which are judgment, which are the hand that pushes away. But it's achieving that balance. That's what part of Torah and commandments. That's part of what it's here for, right? To reconcile that duality and have it manifest through us, which is why there are commandments that are do's and some that are don'ts. So much like there are good and bad people, if you will, who have an evil inclination and a good inclination, right? Knowledge of good and evil, it also exists in the spiritual realms. And so yes, in short, I do believe. I do believe in them. So Western Cape. Okay, so he's answering him over there, and where are you at? So Craig Lace, he asked that. Okay. You had a difficult name, a different, I'm assuming he wanted to say different. Yes, a little Andre went through several different profiles, and now he goes by BMXers with dreadlocks. Taylor 26 says, I like Philo of Alexandria's interpretation of Four Kings War. So do share, because I think I did come across it in the past, but do share. I'd love to learn more about it here and remember again, or know for the first time, because again, I'm not a learned man, I'm not an educated man. Let's see. Peace and Coffee asks, what does Oral Torah say where unclean spirits, demons come from? Well, there is the world of the klipot, as it's known. There, let's put it this way. I said, right, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, the duality, knowledge of good and evil. So there are 10 sfirot of holiness, and there are 10 sfirot of uncleanliness, right, of ritual impurity. And as King Solomon says, Zelu umat zeh, it's this against this created Elohim. So we have the knowledge of good and evil. And much like there is evil in the world, in human beings, there is also evil, if you will, in the world, which is called Olam HaKlipot, the world of the demons, of uncleanliness. Now it's not exactly one-to-one, because the unclean world, is separated from the holy sfirot, let's say. The divine revelation that is holy, that is pure, that is kosher, there's a clear divide between them, but there's a kind of meeting point. So it's a clear division where you have good and bad, right? And you have pure and impure. You have a holy and what would be right, set apart, and what would it, the sacred and the profane, if you will. But there is a meeting point represented in the lower realms of Malchut, of the 10th Sphira, of the I'll leave it at that. There is a place where they kind of meet, if you will, but it's through the human being and through our actions that we are able to keep them at bay, or rather, not really keep them at bay, but to remedy them and to make them clean again. And well, there's a lot there. There's a lot there, but I won't ramble about it. But definitely the world of klipot, as it's known, if you want, look it up. In the Pardes Rimonim, the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, he has a whole section dedicated to the world of the klipot and to the different chambers, to the different halls of impurity. There are 49 gates, 50 gates really, but 49 gates of impurity, much like there are 49, but really 50 gates of purity. So it's this against this, set in this world. The Sefer Yetzirah, attributed to our father Abraham, says that there, no, you know what? I won't get into Sefer Yetzirah now. Craig Lease asks, Hebrew Nazarite, how was your Shavuot? Hope Yah blessed you and your family with much joy. It was good. It was fun. It was restful. I'll tell you, it's a little difficult with a baby, as always. And I sometimes lose my temper, and sometimes I'm not the man I should be, not to my woman, not to my kids, not to myself. But I'm trying. Maybe not to the best of my ability, but I am trying. And I try to find myself again and to make the impure pure if I can, in regards to my own psyche, my conduct. So there were parts that were not fun. Pardon me. But altogether, it was a very lovely Shavuot. I was studying the book of Ruth, the scroll of Ruth. I was studying the Ten Commandments with my kids. I was studying the Torah portion, and the parts of the Navi, the Haftarah, the parts of the prophets that are associated with Shavuot. It's a wedding day. Shavuot is a wedding day. It's the day when we receive the Torah on Mount Sinai, and there's so much there, so much there. And people in Israel, traditionally stay up all night to learn. I've done it in the past. I couldn't do it this year. There have been years where I was awake all night learning Torah, and it's lovely to do. Many people did it. Some are studying Torah, some listen to lectures and different talks, and some have dialogues and panels on things pertaining to the here and now and things that are of old. The Sephardic community has a very long study session where they go through a lot of the Bible. They read the entirety of the book of Psalms, because Shavuot is also the day of remembrance, like the day of death, the yahrzeit of King David, who died on Shavuot. Okay, wow, I think it's been, almost an hour. You know what? I think I'm going to stop now. It's a good time to stop. Other questions that I still have lined up from last week or from yesterday that were received that I saw after Shabbos, and other questions that I see are over here, I will address, God willing, tomorrow. All of them, part of them, I'm not sure, but for now, I will say goodbye. Please forgive me, those who are here in the chat asking questions. I didn't get to them now, but I can feel like I'm starting to kind of and I want to give you guys my full attention. I want to be the best that I can be here for you. And if I'm feeling a little off right now, after an hour of blah, 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 I don't want to be that guy. I want to give you my all, 110% of what I can, which is probably not a lot, but it is my, whatever I can give, I give. So thank you all for joining me here. God willing, I will see you here tomorrow, 10 p.m. Israel time, for another live stream where we will continue these discussions and delve into Hebrew lore from days of yore. I've had a few subscribers join in the last week. It's so much fun. I appreciate every single one of you, whether you subscribe or not, whether you are just here for a second and you leave, whether you are engaging here in the chat or in the DMs or in the comments. I love it. I cherish it. I'd love it to continue. Let's have a wonderful night. God bless. God bless. See you tomorrow, God willing. Whew.